Commission of Inquiry applying to the High Court for an extension to do its work, at least to end in September. I'm joined now by independent analyst Kaya Sitole to give me his reaction. Kaya, good evening and thank you very much for your time. The Commission chair emphasizing that he wants to be responsible. Is the judge being responsible by asking for an extension?
Good evening to the viewers. Look, I think the problem that has been highlighted with the Commission is that we are now approaching the end of the third year. It did start having its first hearings in August 2018. And of course, that particular period does not come with no consequences. It does require state resources to be allocated to the processes of the Commission. So it's important for us to still remember that we're dealing with public resources and we're dealing with public funds. However, what we're seeing here is that Justice Zondo has, to be fairly honest, failed to manage the way the Commission's work needed to work in a manner that would have enabled him to complete his work within a particular time frame. So these multiple extensions are a reflection of the administrative lethargy that has actually underpinned the Commission since inception.
Has the Commission carried out its work in a methodical manner?
And I think what was one of the points that we raised in articles that were written, particularly ahead of the previous application for an extension, was that the type of accountability that Justice Zondo is trying to extract out of the people that are coming to the Commission is also the same type of accountability that he should be practicing himself. In other words, if he's going to go and apply for an extension for a 3-month period, that application should be buttressed by a clear plan of action, a program of action that says these are the remaining witnesses, these are the remaining work streams, and this is why a 3-month extension is warranted and practical. In the absence of that, he really does then seem to be stumbling from one hearing to another, only to discover at the end of the period that actually he hasn't covered what he needs to cover, so therefore he then has to belatedly ask for an extension. If you look at the extension application that we saw today, it comes literally 2 weeks before the official expiry date, which means that it also then puts pressure on the court system to then expedite this particular process. And we have to ask the process clearly the question, clearly he couldn't have discovered today or yesterday that he's not going to finish by the end of June, because he himself has said it's going to take me 3 months to write a report. So unless the report has already been started 2 or 3 months ago, he knew already at that point in time that he couldn't possibly meet the 30 June deadline. So why only show up on the 17th of June and say, can I have a deadline to September? It does look a bit of a bit of an administrative headache.
Tell me then what the reasons are given in this application, except for the fact that there are 6 others that are still needing to come and give oral evidence plus the president, and it is only correct that the president be the last one to close off the commission. What other reason is being cited?
The heart of the application seems to hinge on the fact that when he made his previous application for an extension, he estimated that he would be done by the 30th of June. Now, what appears in this new application is a statement that says, well, clearly I couldn't have got that estimate up absolutely perfectly because it's an estimate at the best of times. So he seems to then be saying that, yes, I've tried my best to hear as much as I can during this particular 3-month period, but I simply haven't been able to do so. And what he then does is that he then says, I've got these particular unnamed witnesses that I need to hear first, and then thereafter I'll hear the voice of the president. And even that idea that the voice of the president should be the final one does seem to be a matter of optics rather than a matter of substance, because if President Cyril Ramaphosa is available today, there's absolutely no basis to say, no, but I cannot listen to you because there are still people that are going to come, and I've decided that anecdotally it makes for good optics for the President of the Republic to be the person who says the final word. What Ramaphosa says whenever he appears is not the final word. The final word is a report that we're now being told is going to take an additional 3 months to get together, and now we're looking at 30 September. So there's this part of the optics which is difficult to reconcile with reality, and the mere fact that even if an extension is granted, you get the impression that we're going to see even more of such lapses. That will mean that 30 September may not even be a viable deadline after all.
Is the impatience justified? The impatience with the Commission and wanting it to complete its work, is it justified?
Well, there was a very unfortunate statement that came from Justice Zondo, which seems to say that people are putting pressure on him to stop the work because of particular agendas. That is completely nonsensical. The key issue here is that it was the Deputy Chief Justice himself who said to the country, I need this particular time period because I'm going to be done at that particular period. So when people legitimately ask, why are you not done at the time that they said you were going to be done, they're simply asking for the accountability that he's trying to extract out of other people that are parading themselves before the commission itself. So the idea that people who say that, why is the work not done, when you said that the work will be done at a particular date are now pursuing agendas, is completely unfortunate and I suspect completely unwarranted. The key point here, as I said earlier on, is that this is not operating in a vacuum. This is a drain on public resources, and public resources need to be watched and monitored with the same type of vigilance that clearly was lacking during the state capture age. So we have to be able to ask the question of, well, what is the cost of this additional 3 months extension? Is this something that was completely unavoidable? And if it was avoidable, what did you do in order to mitigate or avoid putting us in this position?
Well, we'll go back to the cost debate, and then they'll tell you the billions that were stolen compared to the 100 millions or maybe even $1 billion that we are spending on this commission. Weigh the two. Which one weighs more?
It's a simple matter that he's the one that wrote the timetable. It was the Deputy Chief Justice that said to South Africa, this is the last extension I'm asking for, and he put 30 June, and nobody told him that 30 June should be the date. So the question that we then have to ask is, what was the basis of saying that? What was the basis of making that application? Last year, in a previous extension, the basis was that there was a COVID-19 lockdowns, which made things a bit difficult, which made things a bit difficult to manage. But we have to also ask about the substance of the process that happens here, because if you think, for example, of Matjela Kokom, this is the person who you'd say is implicated in one stream, the Eskom stream. But if you then count the number of times he's had to appear before the commission, and then you have to ask yourself the question, well, at some point in time, somebody should have said, these are the NCA issues that this man is to address. Let us bring him to the commission and get through the process, instead of us thinking it's done, only for him to return at 4 p.m. on another day, and then 2 days later, 3 p.m. on another day, because to the people that are observing and thinking that this is actually a use of my public resources, there are legitimate concerns that say it doesn't look like the administrative processes have been as clear and as smooth as they needed to be. And you think that with a 3-year learning process, at some point in time, we should have seen him gravitating towards a more smooth functioning of the process. But as it stands right now, it's still a matter of, you get a surprise that says there's a hearing at 4 p.m. today, then it disappears for 2 weeks, and then he says, oh, in those 2 weeks, I was trying to assess the possibility of us completing by 30 June. The possibility of this commission by completing its work by 30 June hasn't existed for the past 3 months, because, again, based on his own timetable, he said it takes 3 months to write a report. So it's known since the 1st of April that 30 June was no longer feasible. And in his affidavit today, he then says, oh, by the way, I spent the past 2 weeks trying to assess the feasibility of completing the work on the 30th of June. It really just beggars belief.
Have you spent your time assessing the feasibility of getting a fair outcome out of this process, one that is at least meticulous and close to being fair to all those who participated?
So I think obviously the primary prism of fairness is that everybody who's been implicated gets an opportunity to be heard. And that's what Justice Zondo has been very clear that he's going to try as much as possible to give everybody an opportunity to then say, somebody spoke about me, I want to challenge what they said. So that becomes an important part of it. But obviously, clearly, we are going to end up in a position where some witnesses have either not been heard, or they feel that they haven't been given a fair opportunity to then ventilate their issues. I can give an example that also Mashaba, who's been implicated, still hasn't had his day because he opted not to participate. You've got people like Arthur Fraser who can legitimately say, people drag my name, I haven't been given an opportunity to actually go and challenge them. So it now is clear, it's inevitable that there'll be people that will say, actually, after the process is completed, I do not feel that the process was fair on me. And you would think that somebody with Justice Zondo's seniority would have the presence of mind to then say, what are the permutations, what are the possibilities? If I go this way, what are the consequences? And if he has to defer some of these work streams onto other law enforcement agencies, then that seems to be the practical and elegant solution. Again, if you read his affidavit today, that seems to be part of the things that he's considering. He then says some work streams have already published, sent him reports, and others have not sent him reports. And you're sitting here thinking, well, they all report to you. On what basis can that be a work stream that hasn't forwarded you a draft version or a working version of a report that you had said was actually going to be ready by 30 June?
Kaya, appreciate your time and thank you very much for joining us tonight. Kaya Sithole, independent analyst there, giving us his thoughts and analysis on what the delays are. Administrative, it seems, and the Commission not following some kind of methodical approach and properly allocating itself the required time to finish and complete this. All right, let's continue next then on In Focus. We're in conversation with Matthew Parks, COSATU, calling for the Pension Fund Act to be, or the amendments to the Pension Fund Act to be fast-tracked. Stay with us.